So it's a pleasure to introduce you, Nitin from ServiceNow. Nitin is the head of product strategy for customer service management at ServiceNow. Nitin, thanks for taking time.
Yeah, very happy to be here. It's always a fun exercise speaking with you, Guillaume, and I know that we are across the country right now, but at least in spirit, we're together.
Correct. Well, I mean, these are odd times, or have been for a while, right? But
Yes.
look, I wanted to talk a little bit about your recent article about the role of AI and its impact to customer service, traditional channels, digital channels. I know you have an interesting take on sort of how AI is going to disrupt, but perhaps not in the way most people would think. I know you wrote an article about it in Forbes. I was hoping we could sort of hit on that a little bit and kind of get your expanded view on sort of where you see AI moving forward, especially as it relates to customer service and your role at ServiceNow.
Sure. Yeah, I think AI is one of those, I often reference to it as a Hollywood term. It means a lot and it means nothing at the same time. And it's very aspirational. Really, the core of it is technology, which is machine learning, which has been around for, I think when people talk about machine learning, the last original algorithms were built maybe 40 to 50 years ago, right? It's only recently that we've arrived at the computational horsepower to really make those algorithms relevant. And so if you step back and look at that, what machine learning is really aimed to do is to solve for the mundane, right? It is to take all of those things that today, we all expected computers to do are now able to do, right? And so when we have a conversation around machine learning within the customer workflows product, as well as just generally within ServiceNow, we're purpose building this for specific things, which is to really elevate the human experience. So when humans do engage, they're not worried about the mundane issues of getting the right data to show up on the screen, to get the context of what a customer issue may be. And so as such, there's a couple of frameworks that I've relied on. First and foremost, as I wrote in the Forbes article, I refer to AI as the ghost in the machine, right? And so that's kind of a tongue-in-cheek reference to, I'm old enough. I think you're probably younger than me, but even then, you probably know a Great Police album, like anybody who's grown up in the West, right? So the Police most famous album was The Ghost in the Machine, right? And so
I grew up listening to it. So
yeah, so we're together, right?
Absolutely.
And so what the term actually has a very interesting meaning behind the scenes, and really it was a way to explain this notion that we as human beings have kind of a mind-body duality where subconsciously our mind is telling our heart to beat. We don't think about it too much, or to breathe. That's the machine taking care of the basic elements so we can figure out the conscious world. I think it's a great analogy to think about how machine learning and AI can be applied, in enterprise software, right? The best use of machine learning today is to take care of those subconscious things, those things that naturally technology should be taking care of, routing the work, searching, proactively understanding the context of what's going on. So when humans interact, they can have a higher fidelity of interaction when it elevates to that point.
So you're not suggesting a reduction in the role that humans have to play. You're actually suggesting that there remains a role for the human element, but one that allows us to really focus on where we can add value and not just those, to your point, those mundane tasks like, put in your notes into the system or that kind of stuff, right?
Precisely. I mean, what's the most frustrating thing? I've spent many years in this space, and as you have, the most frustrating thing for a contact center agent is to do the same thing over and over and over again when they know that there's a way around it, or to solve for a problem. Most contact center agents are focused on, it's a tough job, right? And at the end of the day, it's a human job, and they want to solve for the problems that customers call in for. Let them focus in on that human interaction while the machine, the ghost of the machine, finds either the knowledge or the context of, or a process that can be surfaced up that can help them resolve that issue. And what that takes is also, it connects the brand and the brand promise back to the human, right? So it's not a, it's not a generic company random, contact center agent you're calling. You're actually speaking to somebody that's connected to solving your problem. And I think that that's a big factor in when you think about machine learning, across the board.
So obviously this year's been one for the record books, right? In terms of all the things that
Sure.
have happened. COVID,
Mhm.
obviously at the top of the list, and the impact it's had to how organizations have addressed customer service. Some are saying that the digital transformation as a strategy has been accelerated, measured in years. And obviously, the big hot commodity at the center of it all is AI, right? But to your
Mhm.
earlier point, the human component still has a role to play. And we saw that in COVID, right? I mean, in times of crisis, you
Yep.
actually want to retain that human connection, because that's potentially the difference between a lifelong customer and one that might, leave you for a different or a competitor. I'm
Mhm.
curious, do you have examples or use cases that come to mind when you think about today, so to speak?
So when you think about, so the framework that I put machine learning into is sort of the what, how, and why. Machine learning is really, really good at solving for the what, which is, when you think about it, if you throw enough pictures at an algorithm, it can differentiate between a pear and an apple. That's the what. There's a defined outcome. The how is, how do I win at chess? How do I route a field service technician to the right location? Throw enough data at it, the algorithm will figure out that. The why is the causal aspect of, you know, which requires a lot of human interaction, right? Machine learning is not very good at solving for the why. Well, why did they do this? Well, you don't have all of the context. So in that scenario, when you think about successes with machine learning, most of them are that we've seen today, and this is how we have rolled out machine learning on our platform, has been to really focus on the what's and the hows. Help solve for auto categorization classification. That's one thing that's being offloaded from agents, and we're doing it at scale internally in our own customer services organization, where it is actually the machine learning technology is now actually more accurate than humans are. So that lets them focus in on a lot more of the technology that way, a lot more of the customer issues that way. Um, the how is really where we're going next. Is how do you actually solve for a problem, and stepping them through the workflow in such a way that you're not forced to go through a constant set of training and retraining of agents, because the system will route them to the right answer based off of previous successes. And then ultimately why is still left to the human being, right? And so I would say our own customer services organization, in deploying our own technology, has seen some enormous success in both cost efficiency, but also in NPS score increases and so forth.
So, but all that makes a ton of sense. So with a few minutes to spare, what does the call center agent or customer service agent of the future look like? How is their day going to be fundamentally different? Is it that they just feel more meaningful interactions? Is it that they maybe not more interactions, but more meaningful, as in, it provides more value to the end customer? And of course, we're talking about
Yeah,
cross channels, right? It could be chat, it could be
it could
web
be any. Yeah,
or telephony. That's sort of
that's right.
table stakes.
Yeah. So when you look at, I like to call it the great inversion in metrics, that you realize that you're shifting into a much higher quality human interaction. What happens is the inversion that takes place is your call handle times, instead of decreasing, start to increase. And the reason why they start to increase is the easy stuff is being offloaded to machine learning, self-service. People are solving for themselves. So only complex things are coming in, right? So when you research study after research study shows that contact center agents want to work on new and novel ideas, because that's the fun part of the job. It will elevate the specialty of the contact center. Plus, the other part of it is no longer will a single contact center agent, they may be the direct connection point, but they'll have to collaborate, right? And so in the industry, the methodology is referred to as intelligent swarming. And the idea is that you can effectively route an issue to the most likely individual or group of individuals that can actually collaborate to solve for the problem. and enable them to work together. We're doing this anyway, right? And I think this year's proven that that collaboration can happen while you're remote at scale, and now it will become more and more part of ultimately solving for customer service issues. And my final thought on that sort of is, I often reflect on, customer service today is no longer an activity confined to a department. Serving customers, you need to activate the entire enterprise, because customer service is more closely tied to the value chain than it ever has been before, which means that the human element matters. Ultimately, it's technology in service of people. That's been the goal that we designed for and what we built for.
Also, then everyone's heard it here first, right? Technology is actually going to make the human element in the overall equation more relevant and valuable, not less. I'm sure our audience may have questions, Nitin, for yourself and I. For those of you that do, feel free to put some comments down below. And myself or Nitin will be happy to address them as quickly as possible. We'd love to get your feedback on some of the content as well. Let's make it a conversation. For those of you who enjoyed this session, we will have more of these 3CLogic Fireside chats in the future. So by all means, feel free to follow us or register, and there'll be more content like this in the future. Then, as always, it's a pleasure. I know your time is valuable, so thanks for taking the time.
Thank you.
All right, Nitin, talk to you soon.
Okay. Yep.